So thanks so much for joining in the career panel. It's for me always been one of the most exciting parts of WITS is to have a little fire chat about various issues related to careers, related to women in data science, and anything else that comes up. We'll spend the first 20 minutes or so talking here on the podium, and I will feed some questions to the panelists, and they will introduce themselves. And after that, it will be open for quite a long Q&A. So please prepare questions and be ready to raise your hand. And as we're wrapping up, I will announce that we'll have a last question here from the panel, and so then you can already start raising your hand so the people with the mic can carry them through. If there are people outside on the live stream who want to ask a question, please remember you do that at #WITS2018Q or on Facebook, and we'll take your questions as well. We'll keep an eye on that. But let's start by quick introductions, and you don't have to say much about your bio because it's in here. But I'm going to give you one prompt. You know, it's just say your name. That's good. I would like to hear from you one reason why you're here today. So why do you like WITS? And then I would love to hear from you. What is the one thing that you heard so far today that really resonated with you? Yeah? Can you do that?
Yeah.
You want to start, Ziya?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm Ziya Ma from Intel. I'm very excited to be here because we all know data science is a fast-growing area. Yet women only make less than 20% of the data professionals. You know, it's encouraging to see in the last few years that forums like WITS has been working rigorously to drive or to encourage women to get into this field. It's also exciting to see so many women passionate about data science. I think in the earlier discussion today, one thing that really resonates well with me is big data is playing a critical part for data science advancement. So it is big data advancement and algorithm, machine learning, deep learning advancement together that's pushing forward the advancement of data science. So
thanks.
That's about me.
Hi, so I'm Jennifer from Atlassian. Before somebody asks what Atlassian is the company that makes software like Jira and Confluence that help lots of companies collaborate with their colleagues. So one interesting thing about me is actually I'm a particle physicist originally, and so I jumped into data science a few years ago. I absolutely don't regret that decision, and so the reason why I'm here today and why I think it's very important for all of us to be there is to never forget you are not alone in this, right? Because when you're a woman in data science among like large crowds of men, and you know, like you feel like it's challenging to get your voices heard, and you know, like it's not always easy on a daily basis. And then at some point, like it's reassuring to see that there are other people facing the same challenges, and to see other faces that meet the same challenges than we do.
Yeah, I've mentioned about my background when I was giving my presentation, so I won't go into it. But to answer your other question, what is it that really sort of inspired me today? One is to see so many women. It's one thing to hear about it when you are in Texas, but coming and seeing the women and listening to all those
It's not fake news.
It's amazing.
It's not.
It's not fake news. Yes, it's real.
No.
It's something real. And among the presentations, I enjoyed every single one of them. One, because I had this interview to give outside, so I didn't listen, and had some credit card issues that I had to deal with, some credit card fraud, so I missed one presentation. But one thing that sort of really got me interested is the Airbnb, because I was always very kind of wondering, should I, go for Airbnb? Who is going to clean the room once, the apartment or whatever once they, but after hearing, right, what Elena has talked about, I feel sort of more.
You're going to use it now?
I think I'm going to.
Oh, wow, one more customer.
So that's the one thing that,
Thank you.
Sort of I got very interested.
Elena, how about you?
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're definitely working hard to make sure it's a great experience. Yeah. So I hope you give it a try. And Yeah, so I'm so thrilled to be here. I was at the Women in Data Science conference last year and had that kind of moment of shock and awe at this amazing room of women and hearing the speakers. It's so inspiring. I love that there is this combination of technical talks and also kind of more broad talks like a career panel. It's a really, really nice mix, and the people here are just incredible. So that is the reason that I was inspired to come again, and obviously I'm a huge supporter of women in data science and so excited for this community to grow and to make sure that people don't feel alone and feel supported. And it's really important. So that's what I'm here for. Definitely a highlight has been connecting with Bhavani about Airbnb. Also, you know, I think a lot of the talks were really inspiring. One that resonated for me was LaTanya Sweeney's talk, and that kind of call to action at the end about using data science to make the world a better place and the power there. And you know, I think that's why I'm in it, and you know, I think that's a really inspiring message.
And we hear this from a lot of people, and one of the questions that often comes up, you know, when you talk to women who are thinking about entering the field, or women who are wanting to grow in the field, they always say, you know, what do I really need to have a fantastic career? Now, you've all been very accomplished, but the interesting thing is that most of you have different backgrounds. So you did computational sciences and engineering, you did particle physics, you did math and the computing, and then you were from education. So that alone shows that women, and men of course, from all sorts of different backgrounds find data science at some point. And that leads me to this one really critical question for many is, what is the skill set that you really need to be successful in this field? Judging from the talks today, you need to do everything. You need to be mathematics, computing, you need to have empathy, you need to understand ethics, you need to understand social sciences, you need to be a good humanist, right? What else do you need to do? You need to actually be able to program a little bit, and then you need to have team skills, you need to be a good communicator, right? And so a lot of you are probably thinking, I don't have all of that.
I think there's actually just one skill you really need, and that's the willingness to be challenged and learn new things on a daily basis, because it's all about like trying new things all the time and being comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Being comfortable with the uncomfortable, yeah, I buy into that. What else, Ziya?
I think it also depends on what kind of a job that you want to get into in this field. Actually, there are, you know, marketing jobs, there are sales jobs. Even in the technical field, there are data engineering jobs, data visualization, the jobs that need, you know, statistician type of jobs, and machine learning, deep learning, algorithm development type of jobs, or data, you know, or you know, other type of jobs. I think you have to ask yourself, what is the job that you want to get into, and then assess the skill sets that you have today, and the job that's required for your dream job. And then you need to figure out a way to get into that. Actually, I provided professional coaching for a lot of the women from Intel and also from the industry. Many women still find it's a high bar to move into the data science field. And my advice is that if you do find the gap is too significant for you, you may want to make adjacent move first. Move to an area that is not too much a stretch for you. You can still leverage your previous expertise, but also it opens the door for you to learn about new skills in the data science field. And then it will better prepare you for finally moving into the field. So that would be...
You want to add something, Bhavani?
Yes, I think very, very good points. But as you said, one person cannot do everything, right? So for me, focus, focus, focus. That's very important. You're going to work hard, and then look at data science and look at the areas that you want to focus on, right? If it's algorithm development, if it's sort of applying the algorithms, in that case, you really need to be a domain expert, whether it's healthcare or finance or cybersecurity or whatever you need. So either focus on developing these deep algorithms, or learn enough about the algorithms, focus on the domains, or maybe educating and teaching people about data science. So whatever you do, I believe that you've got to work hard and really focus on what you have to do.
That being said, I would actually add something, because I actually have an interesting story, because I was a data scientist in a lot of different companies working on different types of projects, right? I mean, so I definitely see the value of finding like this one type of data that you really think is absolutely amazing. So I think, you know, like obviously if I joined Atlassian, and that was because I believe that the data that we have is really amazing because we really we are in a good position to understand the way people work. I would even say we're in a good position to understand how women work compared to men. I even think that we have a role to play here. But from switching from an industry to another one, I actually started realizing that it's just amazing how much of the knowledge I acquired as a physicist I was able to transpose to e-commerce, to software, and to other things. Like, you also need people who have like this ability of switching from one role to another to actually expand knowledge across different areas.
Yeah, I think that's really important, the agility, and you hear this very often. The other thing that you hear a lot, and I was just reading an interview with Maria Clove in Wired magazine in January, and she was saying, look, sometimes or very often, and maybe that's different with Intel now, the way that positions are advertised and what people are asking for in the job position descriptions, a lot of people look at it and say, I don't have any of that. You know, and it is not really inclusive of some of the other skills that are really necessary for good data scientists. You know, some of the communication skills, for example, or teamwork, what we sometimes call the softer skills, although I wish they weren't called softer. They're, you know, just as important as anything else. So do you think, for those of you who are hiring people and helping them, that the way that jobs are described is actually good enough?
Actually, you know, that's a great question. I'll start by sharing an example. You know, my team actually have deep learning or AI engineers. I also have people that have been working in data management or data engineering field for a long time. About 18 months ago, a few data engineers in my team decided to take the deep learning deep learning class from Stanford. So the two of them went to the class. They finished the class at the end of the semester. They passed some exam and they got some certificate. Immediately afterwards, both of them, without applying, they got AI job offers from a top cloud service provider. That shows actually how desperate the industry is for the skill sets and how low the bar is for hiring people.
So you can all do it. The bar is really low.
So don't be afraid of the job descriptions. You know, put yourself through some necessary training, develop the basic skills you can learn from the field after you get the jobs. But you just have to take that risk and give it a try.
You know,
that's a good starting point.
The other thing that you hear very often, and the difference, you know, when people talk about the difference between men and women, I don't like to make this so generic, but
we are different.
Yeah, we are a little different. One of the things that you often hear is that when men see requirements for the next job or a promotion or a new job, they will apply even if they don't have many of those. But with women, they always say, well, I don't know this and I don't know that, so maybe I'm not so suitable. In your encounters in Intel and UT Dallas or in Airbnb, when you're interviewing people or Atlassian, and do you see this? Do you see that women or male versus female applicants come to you? I have seen that.
I'm beginning to realize more and more now because I'm aware of it. In the beginning, I wasn't aware, but I've been around for so many years that I am seeing now, men are just there, regardless of where they come from. It doesn't have to be, it's not American men or Chinese men or Indian men, it's regardless. They want to go for it. But women are always, not always, most of the time they hesitate. And I'm seeing that. And it's sort of frustrating, but that's why I think women really need other women to support them. And for me, my strongest supporters, as I said, when I went to Honeywell, it's the woman who hired me. National Science Foundation, again, is the woman who supported me. So my strongest supporters have been women. So that's really important.
I definitely think that women are more prone to like an imposter syndrome, you know, right? I mean, so it's much easier for a woman to doubt herself than I think a man in a similar situation. So it's definitely something to observe.
Yeah, and it is very true because I, have been hiring for many years. It is very true. Usually when women are 80% confident or ready, we think we have 80% and 90% of the skills, that's the time we feel comfortable saying, I'm ready to apply, I'm qualified for this job. But I've seen in many other cases, men, they're only 50% qualified. But they speak with great confidence that I'm so ready for this job. You know, I think this is where we really need to earn ourselves that opportunity. We need to talk about our qualification, the potential, our ability to learn, and then go and fight for those job opportunities. And before we worry about how big the gap is, sometimes you just have to make that step.
Yeah, it comes back to what you said, of being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And then, of course, how much discomfort you can deal with varies a little bit from person to person, right? But the message, I think, here is just jump in, right, and do it. That's great. Okay, so let's shift focus a little bit. A lot of people also ask, what is it like to be a data scientist from day to day? And when I give data science lectures or courses, I always say, well, don't make it too idealistic, because as data scientists, yeah, you can solve the world's problems, but really 85% of the time you're doing data wrangling. So now maybe I'm not right about this, but so the question is, what does your day look like? And if you're now managing and not doing much data science yourself, go back to the time when you were starting data scientists. What do you do on a daily basis? Elena, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. This is actually something we collected data on, our data science
of
team.
Course, yeah.
We did a survey of...
so it's a lot of coffee drinking. Yeah. No.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of surveys on the data science team. We're very data-driven. We looked at time use and asked people how they're spending their time. And actually, I talked about kind of 3 tracks of work: analytics, inference, and algorithms. And we do see people spending time in those 3 areas and having some spikes depending on their area of expertise. But I would say that data wrangling is a constant throughout for any data scientist on the team. And I think that's just what you need to expect. I mean, if you want to produce great results, you need great data. And so spending the time to make sure that your data is high quality and that's just going to pay off in the results that you can achieve. I do think that it's something that many companies are trying to decrease, right? Because it is something that we spend a lot of time on. And I mentioned the Global Metrics project as one example where, if we can build tools to kind of automate and scale defining metrics or building dashboards, the more that we can develop those tools to scale the work that is taking the most time for data scientists and maybe could be automated, then that could be a big win for people on the team. So that's definitely an active area of research for us and development with our engineering team, helping to build those tools. But yeah, I'm trying to remember what the exact stat was now of like how much time people spent data wrangling. It was actually a lot less than I thought. I think people give the impression that it's like 90% of their time. It was a lot less than that, but I'm sure that varies, by company and role.
I actually believe it depends on the level of maturity of the company,
Definitely,
right? And because actually, working for different types of company, different sizes, I actually find out that when you are in an early stage company that just gets started with data, you do a lot of education. People will tell you, hey, you have a ton of data, you can do everything you want with it. I don't have the right data, so it's not necessarily as easy as you think it is. So obviously, there is always an educational part, talking to the other stakeholders. This is how you need to do your data collection. This is how much you need to invest for hiring, for technologies, etc. So I personally, I spent a good deal of my career talking to people and explaining what data science was about. You always faced as well with this idea that well.
It's okay. Yeah, no, that's great. But I was hoping that one of you would say, yes, you do spend a lot of time on data wrangling, but that's also fun.
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah, okay, good. We don't want to leave you with this impression 85% of the job is going to be totally boring and, I'm not going to go for it. So before we give it to the audience, I always like to ask people, you're working in this field, you're all very passionate about what you do, and you all have a lot of influence and impact on the field. So tell us about looking at the field as a whole, or maybe even your own narrower area. What are your fondest hopes and your biggest fears? You know, we heard so much today about the amazing opportunities of data science and all the things that we could do with it, and then also, you know, also in the questions, some fears and some worries about this, and of course there's reason for this. So tell me, I'm interested to hear from all of you. What is your fondest hope? You know, what you think will be achieved, and your biggest fear? And maybe the other way around, so that we end on a positive note. So, biggest fear, fondest hope.
I think my biggest fear or concern is the supply-demand gap for the skill sets needed. And earlier I gave an example. And actually, in the last few years, both academia and industry have recognized this gap. And that's why we're seeing an increasing number of academic programs and industry workshops to help accelerate the closure of the gap. But honestly, in my view, it's a long journey. It will take quite some time before we see a true ready and mature workforce. And my hope is that, you know, data science today still has a high bar. And even though we expect a wide deployment of data science for businesses or even into our daily life, but the bar is still high. And my hope is that in the foreseeable future, we can truly democratize data science so that it's more accessible for individuals and businesses to improve our life quality and our business results.
Thanks. Bhavani, you want to jump in?
Yes. So I think my concern, the fear, is what I said, right, is cybersecurity, because these data mining or data science techniques could be attacked. So that is something that I'm really concerned about. And I don't think, I mean, what I talked about is just one tiny solution about modifying the support vector machine. The hope, the fondest hope, is there's so much that data science can do, including in cybersecurity when you apply. But I also agree sort of with what Ziya said, the supply and demand. I mean, we really need more and more data scientists, you know, for all these companies. And so can we have a workforce, a trained workforce? One other thing I wanted to mention very briefly is that we need more federal government support funding. Cybersecurity, fortunately, we have got strong education, like NSF has Scholarship for Service, where we train US citizens for cybersecurity education, BSMS, PhD, any one of those levels. And then they have to go and work for the federal government for a certain number of years. 2-year scholarship means they've got to work for 2 years. But I don't think we have such programs at the federal level, because sometimes they would say, why can't the companies pay for data science? But I think I really believe that we need more support to develop these fundamental.
So everybody at NSF listening right now.
NSF and Department of Defense.
Trump in the new budget should be in there. What about you?
No, I think for me the biggest worry is I still see a huge disconnect between what the business side of things and the data science part of things, right? I mean, so usually you have like a company that at some point decides that they have sufficiently enough data to use it for like improving their product or whatever, and they have a very severe misunderstanding of what data science is about, right? I mean, so you have like the two extremes of the spectrum, that on the one side you have the person that believes that with the data you can do anything you want, and then on the other side you have the unbelievers, right? And so one of the problems that you see a lot of in the industry is that sometimes you have data science structured as a lab, right? I mean, so you will have like all the data scientists siloed in one place, far remote from the stakeholders and the business people, right? And so I'm always worried about like, how do you engage the conversation? How do you explain to people what data science can do for your business, right? I mean, so I think it's really important to try to engage the conversation with the right stakeholders, and I think there is not enough emphasis in the data science field to do just that. And this is where we women, I think, are probably good communicators, and we have a role to play to actually try to tie together the business value of the together with the.
So that's your fondest hope, that more women will come, and then that problem will be solved. What about you, Elena?
So I would say my biggest fear is the misuse of data and the unintended consequences from doing that. we have so much machine learning, and a lot of the talks have covered some of the negative consequences of that, and how we have people who maybe are applying the methods but aren't really paying attention to those consequences. And so that scares me, and I am worried about that, and how do we make sure that that's not happening? I think it's a really interesting and open question. On the flip side, I'm really excited about how there's a shift to use data more and more for all kinds of applications, and really to be thinking strategically and logically, and for that to be something that many more people are learning about. One of the programs that's been so inspiring that we've had at Airbnb is what we call Data University. And the idea is that we educate people at the company about how to first ask a good question, and then how to do simple things with data to be able to answer and understand that question. And also to be able to think critically about what they might read in the newspaper, right? Like, there are so many studies that get published that are correlation and not causation, and how do you think about that? And I think that there's so much power in everyone being able to think critically about how the data is being used, and to start to use data more and more to make better decisions. So I think that's like an exciting future. So I guess the scare is we don't do it well, and the exciting future is we do it well.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Okay, we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. So lots of questions. We get some mics. It's easier. When you ask a question, if there's a particular person you would like to answer that question, please just address it to that person, okay?
Hi. Thank you so much for all your inputs and your experiences and your stories. It really helps us. The one thing that I'm very curious to find out is that as recruiters, you might have come across many applications in your years of experience. I'm just wondering, what really stands out to you when you see these applications for data science job positions? And when you look at these applicants, usually, I mean, from a third person's perspective, I'm just wondering as to whether you really try to keep a men to women ratio. Do you really look at that? Or is it just you shortlist based on what appeals to you and what fits the job?
Ziya, you want to start with that? Because you've done a lot of hiring.
Yeah. Definitely. And we take both into considerations. So the first, you have to have the right skill sets. So we're looking for, we're not looking for somebody with all the skills that Margot was just explaining. So we're looking for a few critical skill sets. Let's say if we have an opening for a data engineering job, we look at if the person has any data management and data storage type of experience. If we're looking for AI type of skills, then we want to see if the person has algorithm development or machine learning, deep learning type of skills. But also, we all know this, Intel is very committed to diversity and inclusion. So we put a lot of effort. Actually, Intel is going to be the first high-tech company to achieve full representation for women and underrepresented minority by the end of this year. And we're well on track for that. And it's not easy to achieve that. Since 2 years ago, we set the goal. We put a lot of emphasis onto the hiring process. We go extra miles to make sure that we bring the right diversity candidates into the screening pool. We also, once we hire people, we focus a lot on retention and inclusion. We want to make sure everybody in our company come to work, bring the full selves to the work environment. So there are a lot of extra work that we have to do, but yes, we pay attention to both skill sets and also supporting diversity and inclusion into the process.
Same for the others, or some significant differences with that?
I can say actually, so when I started hiring, I was really focused on keeping the ratios, right? And so at some point, I was I was feeling like I was spending too much time trying to focus on this, so I just completely ignored the names and just looking at the resumes. And now what I'm really after is really diversity of thoughts. So I actually realized maybe a little bit late in my career that I come from an applied math background, right? And so for a while, I was working on a team where all the others were coming from an engineering background. And so I realized I'm the only person here who cares about validating a model, who cares about doing things right, or doing things like the mathematical way, right? And so I realized later that it really matters to have people coming from different backgrounds. And so this, like, I really value a lot when I see on a resume, like, what has this person been doing? Do they have something different to bring to the team that no one on the team has right now?
Very nice. I just wanted to add something very quick, because I don't do recruiting in terms of hiring people, but students and faculty. But what I find is that in data science, also cybersecurity, especially data science, I'm finding there are a lot of international students, masters for graduate level, masters and PhDs. So what we are really trying to do is to actively recruit domestic students for our masters and PhD in data science. And I think cybersecurity also, it's in the same situation. So we really need to do a much better job. Yeah.
I think the only thing I would add is also looking for people who demonstrate growth mindset to some degree. Trying out new courses or demonstrating that they really enjoy learning, because again, that's been a theme throughout, that the field is constantly evolving, and so someone who's excited to learn something new and try something different so that they can keep up to date with their skills, I think that's really important. Other than that, we definitely focus a lot on ensuring that we have a diverse pipeline, and I think thinking holistically about diversity as well is really important. That's what will bring that diversity of thought that leads to innovation, and so not just focusing only on gender, but thinking about other aspects as well. And I really like the idea of like different backgrounds too. I think that's super important.
Well, thanks very much for that. Useful enough? Yeah, you're happy with your answer? Julia, by the way, she's also a high school student. So, and there's her second wit. Go for it.
Well, thank you. Ms. Jennifer Prendki, you mentioned that you love the type of data that you're working with, partly because it enables you to understand how people might work. What about that data, and are there potentially other data sources out there that you think lend themselves to a similar purpose?
No, so there is definitely a lot of data. I mean, there is an explosion of like the different tools that people use to get their work done, and so like obviously there is a lot of data, and so for me, like, this is a completely unscratched part of data science, right? Try to understand how people, people talk about social media, so how do people talk together, like, casually, right? But not necessarily how do they get work done, right? But what I think is really unique about Atlassian is that we don't have just one product. We have an entire suite of product, and usually, we have customers who have the entire suite, and so basically it means that we can follow a team from, like, the time that they start a project all the way to completion, and then we can do a ton of really cool things that have not been done yet, and so that's why I'm definitely excited about what we are doing.
Great. Next question. Yeah.
Hi, thank you very much. And I had a concern with the word democratization, just because it just seemed like there was a connotation there of speed and ease and perhaps shallowness. And the word that kind of popped into my head as the counterpoint was respect. Respect for privacy, respect for human rights, and also kind of respect for the professional integrity of data science. I know that for myself, going from learning, there was this big jump when I got a job, like, oh no, it's on me to know what this data is and ask where it is. It's on me to choose the models that I'm going to use. It's on me to decide what gets stored and what gets thrown away. And there were so many of these things that you couldn't possibly cover in school. But I was interested in what the panel had to say about this concept of, of course, I love the idea of democratization. I love the idea of more women being in the field, but this idea of what it means, what is our professional integrity? Where's our respect? And what do we shoot for? I don't know if that makes sense.
I would say, although I'm not working in the industry, I did work in the industry and Federal Research Lab, NSF, and now UT Dallas. I think some of the things I'm finding, you've got to teach the students at an early age when they are in grad school. I was, during the lunch, I was at the ethics, data science ethics. Because with data science, you have the people who are working in data science, they have access to all this data, right? We are seeing from companies like Airbnb and Atlassian and Intel and Visa, they have all this data. So you have to make sure that they are not misusing the data. And that is something that I'm really concerned about. And that's why I think also it's very important to have a data science ethics course. as well as cybersecurity, ethical hacking, all of that is so important.
Yeah, I so agree with you, especially nowadays where trust in science is really not that high.
Right.
Right, and so a lot of us are really worried about that. What about you, Ziya? How would you respond?
So yeah, I think it's a very valid concern. But if I look at this field, I think today the field is still not that mature, and it's still busy advancing the basic with the basic capabilities. So, and as we have more complete and more reasonable capabilities come into the field, I think privacy, security will definitely follow. If you look at the domains before, like AI, before data science, big data has been in place for the last 10 years now. But when the first 5 years when big data was evolving, very few people, very few customers even talk about privacy or data protection. But nowadays, it's a prerequisite. In order for any enterprise to use big data, you must have a well-governed data store, well-managed data with great privacy. So I think it's just a natural progression with this field. And as the capabilities advance, I think privacy will come into place.
Yeah, well, we're catching up a little bit, aren't we? Yeah. So let's go to the next question, because we only have another 4 minutes or so and another many questions, so you can.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge. The one piece that I took away was jump in, don't be afraid, like be comfortable with uncomfortable. So my question is more around when you jump in, and I just did that 3 months ago. I'm also at Intel on the marketing side. And companies can be on a whole paradigm on how they adopt a data science. So what's your advice on to keep going and not give up and convince your organization to, to be to support data science as you keep?
Not give up. What's your advice?
Never give up. Okay, you have to keep going. I mean, there are days where you might want to just give it all up, but never. You've got to, I want to work for another 20 years, health permitted, right? Because there's so much to do. And I really feel sometimes I tell my husband, I wish I was 30 years younger, 40. It's just glorious days for data science right now. It's just so fantastic, and all the opportunities that you guys have, you ladies have.
So jump in, keep going.
Never give up.
Right? That's the big thing.
I would say there's something very important is to get the right support, right? I mean, because it's very easy, especially because there are still not a lot of women in data science. You can end up being the only woman on your team, right? I mean, so basically make sure you have the right support system in your family, among your friends, they understand what you're doing and what you're going through, and tap on that resource as much as possible.
Well, Elena, what about you?
That's great. No, I 100% agree with, figuring out what will help you to feel supported, and everyone has a different way to kind of get through adversity, so find what works for you, and if it's listening to talks like this or talking to your friends, I think just figure out what you need to do to keep going, because the reality is that all of us have had times when we failed or times when things didn't go well, and those are dark times, but you get through them, and again, that's when you really know you're learning. So I tend to think that if I'm really stressed or don't know what to do, that's kind of a signal to me that oh, okay, I'm going to learn something here. So keep that in mind, and I think that also can give you hope to get through it, that maybe you don't get it right the first time, but you'll learn and you'll do it better the second time.
All right, well, some last thoughts. I mean, the time just flies, it's amazing. I don't know, Darren, what you're doing with this clock, but I think the time in this auditorium goes faster than outside.
So the clock is being maybe manipulated or attacked.
I'm not sure. I have to talk to Darren here. But before we leave, I'd like to give you the opportunity to one quick message you want to give to the audience. Your last thought. Well, no, not your very last thought, but your last thought in this career panel.
I'm happy to start. I think my final thought is to be curious and look at the data. If you see something that looks funny, go investigate. Some of the most fun that I've ever had are looking into something that seemed a little off and figuring it out. And I think that's something that once you develop the habit to do that, it will be really powerful for you.
So I've said all the things I need to say, except one more thing. I would say don't oversell data science, because that's only going to come and hurt us in the end. So be realistic, be true to yourself, and as I said, work hard, never give up. And that's my sort of last piece of advice.
Yeah. Great, Jennifer.
No, I would say like one thing that really helped me build my career is that I was actually a very soft-spoken kind of person, and then at some point I realized I have to be more assertive, right? And so to the point that now sometimes like like somebody, I try to explain to somebody like this is not the way to do it. Oh, you're pushing your ideas on me, right? I mean, and so if somebody tells you that, it's okay. It's just like, it's what we're trying to do, right? I mean, we're trying to change the way data science is perceived and women in the profession are being perceived. So, I mean, like build some ways to build your own self-esteem and be ready to be assertive and speak up your mind whenever that is needed.
Wonderful, Ziya.
And data science is fastly growing. Actually, it's the most promising area. I think you're definitely moving or already working in the right space. But to me, I think the advice I have is, collaboration is key, because today a lot of innovations are happening with academia, with industry top leaders, and also with open source community. So collaboration with those partners to make sure that you stay on top of the curve and you are able to leverage the latest technology trend to solve real business problems.
Well, thank you all so very much for joining this panel. And
thank you for